Here's a spreadsheet that simulates how the body reacts to insulin and changes the amount of glucose. So if you were trying to make kind of a robotic pancreas for someone who has type 1 diabetes, then you'd want to be able to tune the algorithm so it would sense how much glucose there is and add a certain amount of insulin in reaction to that to keep blood sugar down but not too far down. So here these green cells are things that we can adjust, and we want to get this orange cell as small as possible, but also not let the amount of blood sugar dip down too low because that's bad for people. We can just adjust these two things, like we can make this 3.1 and try 3.2, and we can see, is this cell getting a little better, a little worse? We could also look at the blood sugar column and see, is it getting too low, is it dangerously low, stuff like that. This is a data set of a bunch of cells that were taken by biopsy from something suspected to be tumors or not, and the orange ones ended up being malignant. They were from tumors, and the purple ones ended up being non-malignant. They were from something, it might have been a tumor, but it wasn't one that was going to spread. And they looked at these cells in a microscope and quantified how round they are and how wiggly the edges are and what kind of texture and size and everything. So here's a data set, and we might want to come up with a rule, like if you have a new cell and you don't know whether it's malignant or not, you might say, well, if it's on the above side of this red line, then I'll call it malignant, and if it's below that, then I'll say it's not malignant. So it would be our job ahead of time to adjust the line to give us kind of the best possible distinction between the malignant cells and the non-malignant cells that we have in our data set. So here I'm adjusting the slope. You could also adjust the intercept. So deciding where you want to put that dividing line, it's never going to be perfect, right? There's always going to be some cells that are truly malignant that are below the line, or some cells that are not malignant that are above the line, and what's the best kind of trade-off there gets really interesting. So this is a problem in classification. We want to come up with a rule that classifies things properly based on the input parameters like size and smoothness and everything. I've been in communication with a lab that's trying different ways to synthesize chemotherapy medicines. And here's some data. This is realistic but artificial because I don't think I can show the real data they have in a public video, but I can probably share it with an individual student. So they're saying, let's adjust the temperature, let's adjust the amount we're using of some resources and see what kind of yield we get from the chemical reaction. The yield, the higher the better. So we would like to have an idea of what's the best temperature, combination of temperature, amount of this resource, amount of that resource, amount of that resource to use to get the best possible yield. And we have some data points that they haven't taken yet. We could even ask, what's the next set of data points you would want to do experiments on? Maybe that would help you fit a model even better. So that's an interesting problem. One problem we can look at is called the MNIST handwritten digits data set. It's so famous it has its own Wikipedia page. Let me show the digits up close. So each of these is a 28 by 28 pixel block, and the idea is to train a machine to look at, you give it each of these images and it should be able to say that's a 4, that's a 5, that's a 6, etc. We'll see what we can do with that. I know someone, maybe it was me, maybe not, who was trying to plan the seating chart for their wedding reception. So they had the layout of the, where the tables would be all planned, and they had a set of kind of rules or guidelines like, well, this 5-year-old should really sit with their parents at a table, not halfway across the room. Various family groups want to sit next to each other, but maybe don't really need to sit next to their friends from college, or the wedding party's friends from college, for example. Maybe some people would be more important and need to be seated closer to the wedding party's table. Other people wouldn't need to be seated quite so close. There might even be some people who really don't want to sit next to each other. So how would you arrange the seating chart for something like this? And by that I mean, how can you program a computer or Excel or something to do the arranging for you?